Hello and welcome to my first edition of my podcast. My name is Emily Dunoteris, and today I will be talking about my new favorite obsession, Sex and the City. You may be thinking, how could that show possibly be related to media models and the way we interpret media? If you are not familiar with the show, it is about a woman named Carrie Bradshaw, who was a columnist for a newspaper in New York City, and her three best friends. They are all single, navigating life, relationships, womanhood, femininity, jobs, and all the things you could think of. Sex and the City can be analyzed through the lens of media analysis in various ways, particularly in terms of representation, gender, culture, media framing. Here are some key ways in which the show relates to media analysis. The first media analysis we are going to do is in terms of gender. Sex and the City can be analyzed for how it represents women, their relationships, careers, and sexuality. The show challenges traditional gender roles as the four main characters, Carrie, Charlotte, Miranda, and Samantha, embody different and sometimes unconventional ways of being a woman in the 1990s and early 2000s. I am here with this special guest, Laith Mutasab, a man who is currently watching the show, and I brought him here to ask him on how he interprets gender through Sex and the City, because I think women and men interpret it a lot differently, because as a woman, I watch the show and I see it as empowering. I see that, women can accomplish different jobs. They can be single and be successful. And I feel like that's not really shown that much in modern media. So I just wanted to ask you, Laith, what do you think about this idea that Sex and the City transforms the ideas of gender in media?
Well, first of all, Emily, thank you so much for hosting me on your podcast. It's really a pleasure to be here. So the biggest thing I think about Sex and the City so far is that it can be a bit demoralizing, a bit unrealistic, and hypersexual. There's a lot I don't know about the show yet, as I'm only about halfway through, but I'm excited to get further into the show and see how this can develop into an empowering show for women embodiment.
Do you think that a lot of your interpretations and the ideal woman comes from the way that women are portrayed in media? Or do you think that has an effect on how a lot of men? I think it comes from a couple areas.
I think, a lot of men can definitely get persuaded by what they see online. Online is giving these unrealistic expectations, and they see these perfect women through media such as Instagram, TikTok, or even through video games, with unrealistic body types, unrealistic personalities, things like that. However, I do think there is still a large group of men who see their mom or sisters as role models and kind of look for a partner that is similar to that.
So in class, there was a reading called Dream Worlds, and there was a chapter called Prefabricated Dreams. And I found it really interesting that they talked about an idea called the fast food fantasy. And even though I love McDonald's and Burger King, Taco Bell, that is not exactly what this chapter was talking about. So some ideas that were discussed in the chapter was society today is all about having fun. And I feel like that is really shown in the show. Laith, do you think that in the show they give unrealistic ideas of what life is in New York? And do you think it seems realistic, or do you think that... What do you think?
Yeah, so I think in the show they are definitely showing a big example of hypersexuality. In the real world, I think a lot more people are going about their day-to-day life, and it's not so similar to the way the show makes it. But of course, that's the show business. People want to see what's entertaining. They want to see crazy extremes. They want to see things that maybe they do want their world to look like, but that isn't exactly how it is.
So it's funny that you bring up that point about how, like, almost like that's showbiz, because another point they brought up in the chapter was that mass entertainment today is driven by Hollywood and Walt Disney, but we're going to stick to the Hollywood route of things. So kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying, that mass entertainment and like what people want to see is driven by Hollywood and these unrealistic ideas and creating facades and making people think that that's what life is. People move to New York, people have fun, people date, people hook up, and I think it's a different culture that Hollywood has almost made through this show.
Yeah, totally. With Hollywood, you're always going to see the top of the line kind of things. You're in a show, you're going to see like the best of the best and even a little bit of the worst of the worst, but they're not going to show people what they do in their everyday lives. If they made this show and called it Working Life in the City, and it was a show about people who go to work every day and barely have time to do anything outside of work, they're just trying to meet the bills and pay the rent, no one would watch that show. But of course, when they call it Sex in the City and people have these fantasy lives where they barely work and they're comfortably paying their rent and, they can go about in their la la land, hooking up with whoever, whenever, wherever, that's how they're going to make a hit show. And that's why this show, I believe it's been out for about almost 20 years and, it's still a top hit.
Yeah, and I think a lot of entertainment today is about success, and whether it's about the success that, these big producers are making from putting together these shows, or the success that people think that is real, that people don't have to work hard. People can just, buy clothes, buy shoes, work, but at the end of the day, you always have your girls, everyone's happy kind of thing. I think that it's just almost unrealistic, but it's what people like to see, like you were saying. And the reading also brought up an interesting idea about fast food dreams, because fast food is quick, it gets you your dopamine, you're filled, you're not hungry anymore. Is it good for you? I don't know, but it's about like giving people the same success over and over again. People like fast food. People see McDonald's, they know they're going to get the same thing every time. They turn on Sex and the City, they're going to get the same thing every time. But is that realistic?
Yeah, so you actually brought up a point that I was just going to get into. So in this world we live in, people are totally driven by dopamine fixes. Everyone wants to chase that dopamine, and the source you get that from is going to make a big difference on how healthy your life is. As you can see in this show, the dopamine fix these people are going for is this hypersexuality, and that's definitely an addiction, and it's definitely not that happy. Same thing with the fast food, it's not going to be the best for you, but it's going to make you feel good in the moment. It's the same thing. It's a huge industry. We've seen the tobacco industry, how successful it can be. It's all about dopamine and where it's coming from. So yeah, I would say this is very metaphorically to the fast food business.
Lastly, we will look at New York City as a character. The city itself plays a significant role in shaping the narrative for the show. So media analysis can look at how the show uses a city to represent cosmopolitanism, luxury, and how it reflects broader social and economic realities. In the book Dreamworlds, in a chapter called Disney, there was a little subheading titled The Value of a Coherent Decision. And I thought this was interesting. The will to imagine is what has driven Disney theme parks to success. And I really tied this to New York. Is New York a theme park? Is the will to imagine what New York would be, chasing that American dream, chasing this lifestyle? I think that has really influenced people wanting to go to New York, people thinking that, this show is an accurate representation of how New York is and how media can convince people that something's real versus it not being real. So I'm going to leave you guys with that note. Thank you so much for tuning into my first podcast. Thank you, Leith, for speaking your opinion on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure to be here. You're a great host.
And stay safe, everybody.